Good morning. I'm Buster Wright, an alumni of Berry College and on the Board of Trustees. I also am connected as a mentor with the Berry Center for Integrity in Leadership. Last night, as part of Berry's Center for Integrity and Leadership lecture series, we were fortunate enough to have Cheryl Bachelder with us. Cheryl is a former CEO of Popeyes and has a huge corporate success and presence. And she comes with a very special message of servant leadership. So, with that in mind, she's been very generous to be with us this morning. And so, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. It's good to be with you.
Based on your conversations with the students last night, one thing that came up in the process of that, and that is the world in which we live right now. And these students see that it's increasingly defined by polarization, incivility, and extremism. Cheryl, what can colleges and universities do to help students understand that this doesn't have to be the norm? And how do we equip them to become leaders of positive change, which you are the epitome of?
Well, that's a generous comment, but I think you're right. We're in a very complicated and divided, uncomfortable world today. And a few things I would suggest. One is I think we can teach othersness. You talked about servant leadership. I believe that if we looked at conversations through the lens of the other person, it would enrich our understanding. Every time I've met a challenging situation and listened to the other person carefully and let them tell their story and come to a deeper understanding of where they're coming from, I learned something before I spoke. Today, everybody seems to need to speak and post on Instagram before they think or listen. And I highly suggest listening and thinking before speaking. We need to teach that. The second thing, I don't think we teach people how, it's a skill, how to have what I call a crucial conversation. Crucial conversations always have tension in them, always. And so how do we set those up so that we can have the tough conversation but not be personal, not attack one another personally? To be honest, I think education is a huge part of this, because if we are not well educated as to what we believe and why we believe it and where did it come from, conversation's pretty short. And so I think as a university, one of our greatest responsibilities is to make sure we get underneath ideology and core beliefs and teach students to know what and why they believe and how to articulate it in a way to help others understand. That's a lost art today. So focusing on others, listening, and being well versed in the topic.
You know, one thing also that I think about relative to that is it's a question: what happened in our culture that leaders with integrity seem so few and far between? And how do we change that, Cheryl?
Well, it's certainly been the evidence of my generation has been poor around integrity and leadership, really in all kinds of institutions, not just business, but government and healthcare industry. I mean, you pick it. There's bad examples of leadership and integrity and leadership. There are two fundamental things that I think have happened. One of them is our institutions have failed us, and we have become individualist instead of focused on the common good. And that's a dangerous combination. If you go back and study our institutions used to all have a moral code. Just think about the institution of the Doctors Association, the physicians. They have a very strong moral code that everyone was to uphold. In the university environment, there was a moral code to bring independent thinking and crucial conversations and deep research, right? These institutions had moral code. The family had moral code, right? And structure to create a safe environment for children to be raised up. Every institution that we know has faltered and lost sight of its moral founding and grounding. Bad environment. We're not training people up in even how to live in a moral way, right? In a moral code environment. And it's not good for society. My favorite quote about business is Max Stackhouse says, increasingly business leaders will be the stewards of civilization. And he makes the point, everybody else is going to fail. So business leaders, you better do something because we're already seeing the breakdown and it's not good for society. So the second thing is this me thing. And my generation, unfortunately, we're the leaders of the thought. We were self-absorbed. We were chasing money and wealth and airplanes and girlfriends and all kinds of, self-interested stuff. And we failed to think of what we were modeling to the next generation. It was selfish. It was not for the people. It was not for the best of the enterprise, and everybody knew it. And most of the really bad scenarios went down in flames over character traits that they failed to exhibit in leadership. And so we have got to fight off this individualist, me society that we're in. And we have to strengthen our institutions.
Yeah. So true. Let's get to the positive stuff.
Yes.
With so many experiences globally, where do you see the strengths, the weaknesses, and the opportunities for young people to really make a difference, to get that traction worldwide?
Well, I'll just talk to you from a very personal experience. My parents were global adventurers. My mother loved to travel the world, and my dad loved international business. So my family moved every 3 years, but we lived in some fascinating places. Asia in particular, we lived in Hong Kong and Singapore. Opened my eyes to so many people and experiences that I never would have known. So the first thing I would say, if you want to be a leader in a global world, because that's where we're at, there is no small world anymore, it's one world. If you want to be a leader, first of all, I encourage you to understand the strengths of our nation in the United States, the founding principles of our nation. Because most of the world is jealous of those principles. Individual freedoms, dignity of the individual, opportunity. Most countries don't have those principles. And people, the reason we have long lines for immigration to this country is there's something good here. So first, learn what that good is, why it's important to protect, why people beg to come to our country so that they can start a business or raise a family in a safe place, or practice a faith of their choosing. That's unique to America. And you don't know that if you don't study it and if you don't travel. And so the second thing is that go places. If you get an opportunity to intern in another company or do a missionary trip or do an assignment of any kind, go, and find out how big the world is. Find out how good the people are in China or India or Afghanistan. I mean, I've been to, 40 countries, and my world has been expanded by learning about people. And in the restaurant industry, we called it the United Nations, because restaurants would be 8-10 different people groups working together to sell a chicken sandwich. Yeah. It's rich. It will enrich you, and it will help you know where your role is.
Yeah. Sort of lets you sort of see it from a distance and
experience.
Sort of relax. Yeah. With all of this that we see as well, if you were responsible for the effects of the Berry Center for Integrity Leadership and for what you've been told about our purposes, what would you make the primary focus be of the program?
Well, I'm impressed with the program. I'm impressed with the teaching principles of the program and the materials that you're using. There's so much good. So I think really the question is there any opportunity that I could suggest? And the one opportunity I'll bring up is not discussed very much in leadership or business or universities. And that is being sure to include religious liberty in your conversation about leadership. In the broadest sense, because religious practices are really the source of most human beings' moral codes, regardless of your religion. 8 of the greatest world religions have the golden rule as a centerpiece of teaching. It would be good for our society to practice the golden rule a lot of people could get aligned around that. It could be a positive force. I worked for Tom Monahan at Domino's Pizza. He spoke the golden rule every day that we worked for him as a teaching moment. And it's rich of otherness and how you treat other human beings. So if we take religious liberty out of the conversation, we're going to lose access to thinking about something greater than ourselves, to think about moral code that's good for society and creates healthy places where people thrive and grow. We don't want to do that. We don't do that. I happen to be a Christian, but I believe in religious liberty as a foundational principle of our nation because I think it creates the best chance of a moral society because there's something greater than self.
Right. Excellent. We'll try our best to do that. So, switching gears a little bit, obviously you're an incredibly successful woman. And it's not been too many years that women have had traction and had a presence in corporate America. Thank goodness it's improving daily. But there still are bits and pieces of the old ways around there. Mm-hmm. What advice do you have for the women students who are in BCIL and at Berry as to what to look for in a world outside Berry, in the corporate world and organizational situations in this country and in this environment? Because it's almost like we need to give them permission to participate. They're there, thank God. But there's something I think we need to do to help them see that it's okay and how to sort of fit in, if that's the right word.
Yeah, so it's an interesting conversation. I think we need to encourage women to bring their true self-wiring strengths into the workplace. And to do that, as the supervisors or leaders, we need to create a safe environment for them to do that. It's the same of all diverse populations, ethnic populations. The primary complaint is I can't be me in this place. It's not safe. I had a leader that worked for me that was female and very candid. You know, the world isn't very candid. We smooth things over. We don't ruffle feathers. People were very uncomfortable around her. But she was a truth teller, and we needed a truth teller in the room. So we had to say, it is safe for you to be you. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. We'll have to make some adjustments to hear you in your bluntness, but it will be good for our problem solving to do that. The best problem solving teams are diverse teams, diverse in thought, in background, life experiences, capability. Clones are terrible problem solvers. So as leaders, we should want diversity in the room. It will make us better decision makers, but we're responsible to make it safe. If a woman is not comfortable to speak, you will not get the benefit of her capability. Now for women, if you don't speak, the world won't get the benefit of your conversations. And so I encourage women to get comfortable in their own skin as soon as possible, to not try to be something they're not, to believe in themselves that they are wired to bring something to the table, a skill or a character trait, and to bring it, and to not worry too much about the outcome. In my faith background, you know, it says God created men and women in the image of God. We're both supposed to be here. We both are supposed to bring our best to the table, and we're both supposed to do that in a way that's respectful, that you have gifts, I have gifts. Together we're better. We may be different, but together we're better. So women stepping forward with more confidence, and leaders, whether male or female, creating safer environments for that to happen.
That's so helpful. You and I spoke earlier about the long list of things that describe good leadership, and how when you look at those, they're all very female-oriented characteristics. So
Yes, and that's kind of traditionally so. I think now that we're talking about organizations that value human talent more and want to create a more caring environment or want to have more positive impact on the world, I think, yes, those are traditionally perhaps female traits, but perhaps there's some men who share those values too.
yes,
Right?
yes.
And I have learned something from men. A lot of men are athletes, intensely competitive, desire to win. I was never an athlete. I've learned from observing the traits of a competitive spirit and a desire to win and become a better leader for it. So those are the kinds of exchanges that will enrich the organization and the performance results.
That's great. Potential's there.
Yes.
That's the good news. So, with that being said, what is the good news about this generation of college and university students? We talked about that. You spoke about that last night. It's a very positive and it's a wonderful group.
It is.
What's your hope for them?
So I am super excited about this next generation of leadership. It's literally what gets me out of bed in the morning because this next generation leader is kind of designed to be missional, to want to have an impact, a positive impact. Many of them want to be entrepreneurs to create better companies for people. Many of them want to, go to another country and raise their standard of living. They're so determined to make an impact, but they're young and they're going to need wisdom and help. So basically, I'm going around trying to rally my peer group to mentor this next generation. I honestly believe if we invest in sharing our wisdom with these rightly motivated young people, they will be the best leadership generation we've seen in centuries.
I agree.
And that's worth it, man. Let's
Yeah.
work on that.
Yeah.
So young leaders, find your mission and then go find a mentor who will pour into you so that you can make that happen more effectively and faster for the benefit of others.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for your time today.
My pleasure. It's been good to be with you.